Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Dan Tony Sports. I'm Dan Snyder, joined by Tony Casper. How you doing tonight, Tony?
Doing fantastic.
Oh, that's good to hear. Unfortunately, Dan O'Shea could not be with us. He's currently going through concussion protocol after hitting his head from jumping so high because the Rangers won the series. We would like to extend our best well wishes to Dan and hope that he's all set for us next week. But Tony, this week we've got a really good show. We're going to be talking NBA playoffs. We're also going to talk about the MVP race and a rivalry, not rivalry, in the NBA. But first, we're going to start with our pigskin poetry. This one is titled, The Draft from a GM's Perspective. The draft is here. The draft is here. Who will go number one this year? Will it be Miles? Will it be Mitch? I wonder, what did Fournette pitch? To draft a QB or draft D-line? If you get Malik Hooker, you'll be just fine. To trade your pick, to move ahead, pick the wrong player, your career is dead. There's so much pressure, don't be wrong, or hope you've had your guy all along. Jonathan Allen makes QBs shiver. Chargers, please draft a quarterback and trade Phillip Rivers. It'd be the second time he's drafted on or traded on draft night.
It would be. Although, they're one organization that I wouldn't be surprised if they actually pulled that off. Because there's no rhyme or reason to them on draft day.
Well, he also doesn't like LA. He's already been pretty vocal about that.
Yeah, he's a family man. He's probably going to want to be somewhere where I'm sure he's not happy about having to move his family. And if he's got to move it, you might as well move it now and know where you're going to set up for a little bit of time. I mean, he can't have that long left in the tank.
Cleveland.
God, that'd be a nightmare.
Could you imagine if they trade the 12th pick for Phillip Rivers?
It's not out of the realm of craziness. It actually could happen.
Well, we will see as the NFL draft is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the 28th, 29th, and 30th of April. So let's get into what we're going to be talking about tonight, and that is the NBA. First question that I want to ask is a potential rivalry, not rivalry. When asked about the Cavaliers versus the Warriors, LeBron James says it's not a rivalry. However, head coach Tyronn Lue says it is a rivalry. Who do you think is right?
I actually tend to lean more towards Tyronn Lue, even though he's kind of just a puppet for sake of argument. I mean, LeBron runs everything in Cleveland. He may even be the mayor. But I think Tyronn Lue is right. I mean, you look at this age now that we're in a superstar league, or superstar team-driven league, there's few teams that don't necessarily adhere to that per se, but that seems to be the way that you have to go if you want to compete for NBA titles. And you have LeBron on a team where he leads people to finals consistently year after year.
This could be his 7th straight year in the finals?
Yeah, and this is his 10th straight sweep of the first round. I mean, the dominance is there when he's on the team. And, I mean, you still have Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving. They are a three-headed monster almost of a sorts. And then you have everyone that's available in Golden State. You've got Draymond Green. You have now Kevin Durant. You still have Curry and Thompson as the Splash Brothers. I mean, as far as East-West rivalry goes, I mean, this is the closest thing we've seen to Celtics-Lakers in a long time.
I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to say it's not a rivalry. They've met in the finals twice.
Now, if they meet this year, would you then give it more credence?
No, and here's why. It's an amazing feat, yes, but if Alabama plays Clemson in the national championship game for a 3rd straight year, would you call that a rivalry? I wouldn't.
I mean, I guess I could see your argument in that sense because they're a rivalry, but that's a whole different ballgame to me because a rivalry, when we're talking about college sports, has to be something where you meet people pretty much throughout the season every year. That's what creates those great rivalry weekends. Whereas the NBA, you are going to play every team every year, but in this sense, what matters is at the end. It's the championship. It's the pinnacle, and you have to win 7-game series in college football. Now with the tournament, the way that they have it, the 4-team playoff. First off, you've got to play to get in there, and then the chances of you meeting again could be higher if you're one of those higher tier programs. To win and get to the NBA Finals is a much more difficult feat. Depending on which conference you are in, it's way more difficult for one side versus the other. But for 3 years in a row, for us to see the same NBA Finals, that's pretty rare.
It definitely could be. It has the making of potentially becoming a rivalry. For me, when I think of rivalries, I think, is there bad blood? I think a bigger rivalry just from, the end of last season, beginning of this season, is Golden State, Oklahoma City because of Kevin Durant. When I think of rivalries, I think of fan bases that hate each other.
No,
I don't think Cleveland and Golden State, I don't think they hate each other, not the way Florida State, Miami does, not the way Duke, North Carolina does, not the way Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan do.
Or Boston,
Yankees.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think the pretext can be set forth, especially if this was to happen again, if the finals go down the way that everyone seems to be predicting with Golden State against Cleveland. If Golden State goes ahead and wins this, that's one for you, one for us, one for you again. This has the makings of starting to create something that could brew into that rivalry. But usually you're right. There has to be some kind of pre-built animosity, a legacy or history of this animosity, or a move that creates this animosity, such as what you were saying, Golden State and Oklahoma. Unfortunately, Oklahoma, I don't think, has the weapons necessary to reach to a point where they would face off against
Not yet, they don't.
Not yet. Yeah,
they
right,
might.
Right.
We'll talk about that in a
Right, but we don't know.
bit.
I mean, if these two teams, I can see a rivalry building, I guess I can say, because it has the makings to be able to do it, and if these teams can stay at the level that they're at, if these two teams meet in the NBA Finals for 5 straight years, and that's a hypothetical, obviously they have to get to 3 first, but I can see the building blocks to a rivalry in the making here.
Yeah, I agree that it's in like the early stages. If this were a rivalry garden, the patch is laid. You're just waiting for the seeds to be planted and watered.
Right, and at this point, I mean, the seeds are there. The last 2 finals, this one could make another one. We could start to see something sprout. I think we have to wait and see how this thing progresses even further before we call it a rivalry just yet. But I can see where Tyronn Lue is coming from in the sense that it does get the feel that it could become that.
Right. So let's shift focus from that rivalry over to a half of the rivalry we just spoke about, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and a bit of a rivalry in itself. Who's going to be the MVP of the NBA? Is it James Harden? Is it not Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook? Or is it going to be LeBron, Kawhi, Giannis? Who's it going to be? Who's going to be the NBA MVP?
And it should be Russell Westbrook, given the numbers that he's put up. I mean, those are extremely impressive. Nobody can doubt those. The only issue I have is, I mean, he is valuable to his team in that sense, and I think that's what should make him the most valuable player. Although when Oscar Robinson got his triple-double average, he didn't win the MVP. I also think, part of me, and I don't think he's going to get the votes, I think it should be Kawhi, just because I think he is the most valuable player to his team, offensive and defensively. Don't get me wrong, Russell Westbrook does a lot of things on both sides of the ball, but I don't feel he's where Kawhi is defensively, and I think he's allowing his scoring, and we'll get into it when we get into the matchups, as to why I think that can almost be an Achilles heel at times, but he's letting his scoring numbers make his numbers seem more inflated, whereas we don't pay enough attention, because we all like the guy that scores, who hits the long ball, drains the 3. We don't pay enough attention to defense, and that's why I think Kawhi probably would deserve it if we looked at it from an outsider's point of view and took in the whole aspect of work as well as being the most valuable player. That being said, I still think that Russell Westbrook probably deserves it, because without him on that team, they're probably in the basement of the West.
They're in the basement of the NBA. I mean, if you take Russell Westbrook off of the Warriors, the Thunder, if you take Russell Westbrook off of the Thunder, do you think Enes Kanter is going to pick up his points on a regular basis? You think Steven Adams would?
No.
No. If James Harden wasn't on the Rockets, if he were taken off, I have full confidence in Trevor Ariza to take over consistently.
Well, I mean, they have other weapons. I mean, they have Ariza, Beverly. They could go to a small lineup. They can change things up that will allow them to still be successful. Maybe not where they were ranked in the West where they are now.
They're still a playoff team.
But they could, at very least, they're a playoff team that could or could not be in the playoffs.
Oklahoma City is 25 wins tops without Russell Westbrook.
And that may even be generous. Because, I mean, his output is just too great. And when we think about the term most valuable player, it's hard to argue that any one player adds more value to his team in particular than Westbrook does.
Is there any other player in the NBA that you can think of that the rest of the team doesn't feel comfortable taking a final shot, so they have to give it to him? I don't think it's that way in pretty much any other team. Even the Knicks, where Carmelo is the guy. We saw many times this year. Kristaps Porzingis took the final shot. Derrick Rose took the final shot. There were 2 games Courtney Lee hit a game winner.
No, I mean, if you take what Paul George says, the Pacers, because Paul George is supposed to be taking every final shot that they ever have, given the fact that he's never made one. But
yeah, we'll get to Paul George in a little bit. But I disagree with that. The Pacers have good players that I think would be comfortable taking the final shot.
Yeah.
Steven Adams isn't. No one in Oklahoma City would be comfortable taking that final shot if Russell Westbrook wasn't, or if Russell Westbrook was on the floor. They wouldn't feel comfortable taking the final shot themselves.
No, and I think that's part of it too. I think Russell Westbrook, I mean, he's accepted the role this year as being the leader of that team, not necessarily having to share the spotlight with Kevin Durant, and he definitely has accepted the role of living or dying by the sword in Oklahoma City. So I think he's in a position where the team knows that if the game was on the line, he's got to be the one to take the final shot, and I think that the whole team accepts that too. Again, if you think about it in that sense, then he's the most valuable player.
Do you remember the Oklahoma City Thunder back in the day had Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Serge Ibaka all on the same team?
Yeah, I'm actually still kind of floored that team together was unfortunately not able to stay together, and I get that because numbers don't always work the way that they should, but I'm surprised that they actually didn't get a championship with those 4 together.
Oh, they were so
Looking back on it.
close. They were so close. But who was it? Who was it that beat them?
San Antonio, I believe.
No.
Yeah,
no. It was San Antonio.
San Antonio,
and then they beat Miami in the finals.
Yes, yeah, that was it.
I'm pretty sure. So you think it's going to be Russell Westbrook, but should be Kawhi Leonard?
I mean, if I'm looking at it objectively, yeah, I think it should be. Although Westbrook does deserve it, given what he's gone through at this point. I guess, in my opinion, I still give it to Westbrook, but it's not going to be the popular opinion. I think Kawhi is a very close second.
I think exact same thing as you. I think it's going to be Russell Westbrook. I think it should be Kawhi Leonard.
And I don't think the numbers are going to show that. I have a feeling if I had to guess, it's probably going to go Westbrook, Harden, James, and then Kawhi. I would like to see a little glimmer of hope and have voters realize that Kawhi should probably be above LeBron, in my opinion. But
yeah, but it's not going to happen. It's going to be Russell Westbrook, and if it's not, it is an absolute travesty. Because you brought up Oscar Robertson. Who was it that won the MVP? It was Bill Russell, right?
I believe it was.
Yeah, Bill Russell. I mean, Bill Russell is just like LeBron James is now, except better.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Slinging controversial topics.
Yeah. I mean, That's getting into a different argument, and then everybody's going to bring in the era conversation. So,
well, I just want to point out if we're talking